Mary, when did you become interested in aviation?
I did not become interested, I think, until I actually decided to join the Air Force. I grew up in a Army household and I was really familiar with the Army and I didn't know a whole lot about the Air Force. I had flown commercially. I had maybe been to one air show when I was younger and I was like, that was really cool. But nothing really stuck with me until I was like, okay, I want to join the Air Force. Let me learn all things aviation. And I remember, I don't know where I got this book. And I had this book of all the different aircraft of the Air
Mhm.
Force, and it showed like all their kind of a low key version of their capabilities. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Of course, they're going to get you with those images with the flares coming out of all the aircraft.
Yeah.
That's how they get you when you're young. You're like, that's so cool. So that's really what sparked my interest in the aviation side when I was enlisting into the Air Force. I had a mentor tell me to, he's like, hey, Mary, if you're going to join the Air Force, put all flying jobs. Flying is going to be the coolest thing you can do, and you're going to love it. And, 8 years after that, I can look back and say, yeah, it was the coolest job I ever had.
Yeah, so like when you joined the US Air Force, did you know what branch you wanted to go into?
Initially, so I started looking at the Army in the sense of I was going to do ROTC and
Mhm.
go to college. And that was kind of the initial trajectory. When I sat down, Mike, to fill out my college applications, and it's like, why do you want to join or come to our college? I was like, I don't. My lovely mother wanted me to come. And so when I approached my parents and was like, I don't think I want to go to college, and we were still looking at this, they were like, whoa, whoa, whoa. If you're going to enlist, you need to join the Air Force. And I think they just knew from their experience, both my parents were in the Army, and they were like, you will love the Air Force. They treat their people right, the lifestyle's great. And so that's what pushed me into that branch.
Could you talk us through some of your training going through, the first steps joining the Air Force? Did you have to go through the whole boot camp thing? Is that part of the Air Force?
Of course.
Yeah.
I joined right out of high school, 3 weeks in summer, and then went right in. It's in San Antonio, Texas. That's where I'm from, though. So there wasn't a whole lot. Looking back, boot camp's one of the easiest things that you'll do. There's,
Hmm.
of course, stress that comes with it, but that's part, they're trying to stress you out. And as long as you go, this is just something I need to stay neutral about, learn, you're going to get through. It's 8 weeks. And you can do anything for 8 weeks. And did that. Now, to go more into the aviation side, after I finished boot camp, that's when you go into a fundamental course for aircrew, all aircrew in general, that's going to become, any position enlisted, loadmaster, aerial refuelers, flight engineers, all of that.
Hmm.
I think it's just to kind of give you a basic overview of how aviation works. And I always compare it to kind of a weed out program. Can you take the test? Can you drink from the fire hose to make sure you can stay in and handle the training that is to come? And that's where the intensity comes once you're in your job field. After that, I went to basic aerial gunner course, which is we call it BAG. And that's a few weeks of generalized gunner training. All of this is didactic classroom. You don't know at this point which airframe you're going to go to. You just know that, hey, I'm going to be a gunner. I believe there's probably a lot with billeting and the needs of the Air Force that come into play where they put you. And you can do a dream sheet. So if you want to go to a certain base or a certain, aircraft, you can of course do that. But again, the needs of the Air Force. And so at the time, I think almost everyone in my class, we all stayed together and went to gunships. We had one guy go to helicopters. And so after you find that out, you do your SEER, so survive, evade, rescue, and escape training. That's in Spokane, Washington. It's about a month long.
Wow.
And then after that, you do water survival. And so for fixed wing aircraft, everyone here is aviation that knows. I feel like I over explain sometimes, but it sounds like everyone will know what I'm talking
Oh
about.
yeah.
Okay. So fixed wing was down at Pensacola. And you learn how to do the water training. Of course, if something goes on with the aircraft, you have to have all these skills. And then from there, Mike, we go to I went to Hurlburt Field, Florida. That's where I was stationed the entire time. And that's where all your training is. It's aircraft specific. So the pipeline is long. It's
Mhm.
quite a few months of just, again, you're going straight didactic, manual pubs back in the day when everything was paper. We eventually got iPads and when I was in, but you learn everything about your job to the point where you can, we call chair flying. You can do everything
Mhm.
where you're running it through your head and you know what's going on, because then you go into your simulation and ground training phase. So we actually have simulators for, it's kind of like the setup of the gunship. So I don't know if I'm skipping ahead, but basically you have your gun deck with the guns and we have a whole room set up for that. And
Mm.
you put a headset on and you go into comms with the flight deck and you practice like you would, you're flying. Once all of that on the ground is good, then you train all of that on the airplane. And that's a
Wow.
whole nother set.
Was that the more prized role for a gunner rather than a helicopter, or was it just like who was it different? Because I can imagine everyone wants to go up the Herc rather than like the Helos.
Yeah, I think there's some people, I'm looking back at it now. I initially wanted helicopters because it
Oh,
seems more in it, right? And
okay.
I don't know if I would have necessarily enjoyed it. I love the gunship. I love the large crew complement and being inside, all of these things that you start to learn. You go, okay, this is why this is my path.
Mhm.
We had a big transition when I was in. A lot of gunners actually cross trained to helicopters and left gunships for that. And some guys loved it, and some guys, it was more of, hey, I did it, and there wasn't necessarily like one is better than the other. I think it's just
Right.
different. Um, yeah, because it's a different mission set too.
So let's talk about the AC-130. Talk about its mission, what it's all about, and what were your first thoughts on the aircraft as well.
Yeah, the AC-130 is the best, and of course I'm biased. um, so I was on the AC-130U variant. There's different. The latest
Mhm.
is the J model. The U model is since retired, and it is a close air support platform. So we go out and support ground missions when guys are out deployed, running different operations. We go overhead and support them. This could be anything from they're actually troops in contact, and we can provide fires to suppressive fires. And then just sometimes we're just over there for noise signature, staying overhead in case something does happen. So without all of that, that's like our core mission set. And so what we have is the 25 millimeter Gatling gun, the 40 millimeter Bofors cannon, and then the 105 millimeter howitzer. Those are our three weapon systems on the AC-130. And that gives us range, right? We can be very precise with all of those weapons, but they help us with different targets and different needs on the ground. The 25 millimeter is really great for suppressive fires. That 350 round burst is
Mhm.
loud, it's bright, it sends a message. If you're looking for precision and you need to be very close to your target, like the 40 millimeter is going to be your go to. And then the 105, of course, I mean, that's a huge, huge weapon. You
Yeah.
know, that one is meant for the ground. They locked it in tight on the gunship. Phenomenal. I mean, the recoil on that's 49 inches into the aircraft. It's
Wow.
absurd. Whoever thought of this, and but it works. And so we have all of those, and then within the crew complement, we have two pilots, flight engineer, sensor operators, fire control officer, navigator, electronic warfare officer, and then when I first started, it was four gunners and a load master. And then they transitioned us into special missions aviators. So we became the know-all of being a load master and a gunner.
Did you have to focus your mind even more because you had kind of two roles, or was it just did it come naturally once you settled into both?
Absolutely not, Mike. It was a challenge for me, I'll say. I mean, it's the load master, they do more with weight and calculating math. There's a lot of math. Public math is not my forte.
Okay.
So I definitely had a learning curve there. And then, man, being a gunner is so fun.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
when you deploy, at home it's okay. You can kind of intermix, but when you deploy, you have a little bit more of hard rotations of where you are on the airplane, right? So I picked like this is my gunship. So here's the 105. And then on this side of the gunship, you have a window, and then there's a window on the bottom. And so
Right.
you rotate through, and the loadmaster will have to lay down, and that bubble is what we would call it. It was you just scan the ground first surface to air threats, and so those made for some long nights there. So God bless the loadmasters that did it for 20 odd years.
So
Yeah.
I'm guessing, obviously, through training, you got to fire each of the guns. And can you remember each one and how it felt for that first time firing like a live round, as it were?
Yeah. They train you. We have dummy rounds. And so when you're on the ground, just for the weight, and you get the hang of how
Mm.
to handle it. But then once you see, especially the 105, again, it's recoiling like 4 feet into the aircraft. And you're
Mm.
like wide eyed, like this is real. And it kicks the airplane. So it's unbelievable. That's how I would express it, for especially the first time. I think when I probably watched it the first time, my instructor just laughed at me because I was probably dumbfounded.
Yeah, I can imagine. But yeah, what
Yeah.
would you, in your opinion, the strengths and the weaknesses of the AC-130 are? Because obviously it's still in service.
I mean, the strengths within that platform, there's so many. The way we operate and what we provide for the battlefield. Fighters and ISR and everyone has a job, right? And it's very
Mm.
important. The relationship we build with the ground team, our ability to stay overhead and build situational awareness. A lot of times I can just compare it to fighters. It's different.
Mm.
They can come in and perform these amazing runs, and then the difference for us is we fly in what's called a pylon turn. So we basically fly in a circle like this. And then
Mm.
you're just rotating over the battlefield, and you're building situational awareness. Your eyes are on the friendlies, the enemy, what's going on, and you can really be engaged with what's happening if something turns south sideways and you need to engage. Um, and I think that really does make us different because we can hone in, and then the precision we offer. At the time with the U model, I mean the 40 and 105, the precision we could offer with that is incredible. One of my shoots, my first shoot downrange deployed, we were shooting the 40 millimeter within 14 meters of friendlies,
Crikey.
and it's unheard of. And it just speaks to the trust between us and the ground party
Yeah.
to be able to execute that, and then how close we can actually get and zero in those weapons to save these guys' lives.
Yeah, let's talk about your first squadron and how did you feel? Did you feel ready to be on the front line? And did you fly every day as well?
So I was at the fourth SOS at Hurlburt. Did I feel ready? Absolutely not. I think everyone probably feels that way.
Yeah, yeah,
I would say it took me a while to really settle in.
yeah.
When you're young, I was 20 years old when I got there, and you're in a squadron now with 400 amazing established men and women who have been deployed multiple times, who are excellent. These are the best of the best.
Mm.
And so that is intimidating to walk into. And I just try to do my best to know my job inside and out, be a team player, be a part of it, have a good attitude. All of those things are important when you're coming into a unit like that. And then, Mike, what was the second part of your question?
Yeah, did you fly every day or was it like staggered out through the week?
Yeah, so they typically stagger it out. I would say anywhere from 1 to 3 times a week
Nice.
for training. Yeah, for like training sorties. So usually about two. You can guarantee you'll fly at least twice a week for training.
Mm. And obviously, it was your first squadron, and you're new on the squadron. Did you have any secondary duties that you were like, "Oh my God, I hate this"?
I think we all did. anyone, anyone that's been in the military and aviation knows you always have a secondary duties that you have to do. Because when you're not flying, the squadron still got to run, and who runs it? We do. And
Yeah.
when I first started, young enlisted, they pretty much there's a couple shops that they'll put you in. And
Uh-huh.
so my first one was mobility. Learned so much as we are flying, again, this is when we were in Afghanistan, in Iraq, you have to maintain readiness. And this, like, we had folders of, hey, do you have this thing checked off? Do you have your sea Bernie? Are you current flying? Is your weapons done for, hand weapons? So making
Mm,
sure you're current and proficient on that. So basically we keep track of all of that. And then we also hold alert. And when we're at home, we have crews that are made to sit alert for the month. It's special operations anytime, any place. So we have to make sure we're ready, and just keeping track of that. And then I shifted to, where did I go? I went to weapons and tactics shop. I did that for a little bit. And then my last shop, you change every few years. I was in standard standardizations and evaluations, not as an evaluator, but just basically you help run the shop. So maintaining
right.
people's evaluations, kind of like mobility, but more for, okay, here's how we execute our checklists. Here's the safety parameters. Are they performing their jobs? Because I think it was 18 months. Oh, my memory. You had to get recertified, like have an evaluator come on and make sure you can do your job, answer the questions. You have
Right.
to test that proficiency. It has to be there. So that was the last shop I worked at. I enjoyed stand eval. Mobility was challenging, but it was good. It was a lot of work.
Nice. So, did you
Yeah.
ever fly on any large exercises? Did you ever go to Red Flag or Maple Flag, anything like that?
We did, Emerald Warrior is a big one that's run down in special operations that they host at Hurlburt Field. It's like a 2-week exercise. So I've flown that one probably once or twice. We did another exercise in uh, Germany. I can't remember the name of it to save my life. And then I think I was scheduled for another exercise and it got weather canceled. And
Mm.
of course, I can't remember. That was local to Hurlburt Field as well.
Let's get on to, obviously, you mentioned live ops there. Talk us through this, and especially your first deployment. And yeah, did you feel ready at this point? Because that must have been a kind of shock to the system, going straight into live ops and actually doing your job for real.
Yeah, it's a mix of emotions because
Mm.
you're excited to to be a part of the team, to finally say, okay, I want to show that I'm here and I'm ready with you guys. Then you're new and you're scared and you don't know what to expect. So my first deployment, we actually took a bird over.
Right.
You can fly commercially and they'll get you there, but we were actually doing like a tail swap. So we took one of the planes from at home and we flew it across, the world to get to the Middle East, and then they flew
Mhm.
one home.
Right.
And so that was the coolest trip I've ever had because the plane broke every stop. We stopped in Bermuda, we stopped in Spain,
Nice.
we stopped in Crete.
Yeah.
So that was yeah, God bless me with that one. And it was a lot of fun. But you get to know your crew really well. And then we got downrange, and I'll never forget unloading our bags off of the ramp. And I looked up, and there is a hangar, and there is just holes all on the door
Okay.
from idea indirect fire attacks. Probably who knows how long it's been there, but it's kind of that, okay, this isn't a game.
Yeah.
And so there's that settling of like, this is real, time to lock in. And that was the intro to my first deployment. And the gunship, we're not out when we're doing these missions, we're not shooting every night. If we're
Mm.
not shooting, that's a good night, because a lot of times when we're engaging, that means our guys on the ground are needing our help.
Yeah.
And that means that there's fires. And I've been over a few missions that, they end in tragedy, and it doesn't ever get easier.
Mm.
Um, but I remember my first deployment when it was winter time, so December. So we were going over this op, and I'll never forget about this tanker. I don't know why this part sticks to me. I think because it just shows the timing of how important it was that we were
Mm.
there. You know, we can go get a tanker to air refuel, and the pilot is like, we're not going to do that. And I don't know what his
Yeah.
reasoning was. He's just like, we're going to stay over this op. And so we did. And within that hour of when we would have been at the tanker, this operation went down. And it just goes back to that timing. So we're watching these guys go up kind of like a mountain, and they start taking fire from these guys in a cave. And I remember I was in the battle management center, so the booth is what we referred to it, and this is where like all the computers are. So it's really a boxed in room with all the computers, the sensor operators, the officers monitoring the battlefield. And I remember hearing comms. So you're hearing everything going on. You start to hear the gunfire. And then I remember watching the screen. I was right behind the navigator watching, and they lost a guy on their team. And
Mm.
seeing that happen, and you're watching it, and then the comms catch up, right? And
Mhm.
you're going, okay, something's going to happen. We're going to start engaging. As soon as we saw that, we got ready to put the guns on the line because we're pressurized. That was one of our capabilities. So we have to actually send the 105 back, because when we're just flying around, it sits inside the aircraft so we can maintain pressure and we're not on oxygen.
Mhm.
And then we depressurize the aircraft, get ready, and then we get the call to fire, because what happened then was these guys, our friendlies, were like pinned down. They are getting hammered by the enemy.
Yeah.
And we went in and started engaging. That way they could return their fallen with honor, and they had wounded individuals on their team and get them out. And that's why we shot within 14 meters, because that was the only way they could get out of there. And so at 20 years old, you don't really understand it in a
Yeah.
sense. You're just moving very fast. I was very mechanical about it, making sure I'm going through the motion, because slow is smooth is fast. And you
Mhm.
don't want to, those weapons need to be on the line. And I was on the 40 millimeter that night. And so making sure you're watching out, you're doing everything correctly, no malfunctions are happening, because that does happen, and that's what we train to. And just making sure for those guys that you can provide that for them. And yeah, I'm still friends with one of the guys from that operation. He
Oh,
was
nice.
shot five or six times. I mean, phenomenal. He's in the UK, phenomenal
Nice.
human. And yeah, it just goes to show it's a people. It's people. It's all about that mission for that. So you debrief after every single flight,
Mhm.
and that's just ingrained into you. You talk about everything. And I think they brought them back to Bagram. And I want to say the pilot went out with a couple of the other guys to meet them
Right.
and check on them. And when you're deployed, that space is not really provided, because you have a mission the next day. You
Mhm.
debrief, and then you have to stay in the game and keep going. For me, I think, again, at 20 years old, I saw that, and I saw how fast it happened.
Mhm.
And I really was, from that moment on, I was like, I need to be thankful for my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was so quick, and it gets me emotional to this day. Just, yeah. I think that was one of the greatest things I could learn, is to be grateful, and to actually, and you witness that sacrifice
Yeah.
for,
Absolutely.
that these men are making, and it's tremendous.
Yeah. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, it's so young as well. That pressure on you must have been insane. I mean, I can't. What was I doing? I was probably in a club somewhere when I was that age. You know, not doing what you were doing. But yeah, so when you were in on live ops or in theatre, did you work closely with other nations, or were you kind of like separate, you were own thing as the US Air Force?
Yeah, it really depends. I think in Afghanistan we did a little bit more with our partner nations. Like I said, this operation was UK individuals, phenomenal. And then I think we've done a couple different partner forces while we were in Afghanistan. But that it was a mix. Of course,
Mhm.
primarily US, but there were definitely ops where there were, you know, our other friendlies on the ground that we were over.
So I'm sure you got loads, Mary, but maybe share one or two memorable stories from your time on the AC-130. It can be on the air, with the ground, with your crew, anything like that stands out in your mind.
Okay, I don't know if I have. Sometimes I'm like, it's Fight Club, Mike. We don't talk about Fight Club. No.
Yeah.
Um, there's some of it, man, the camaraderie. I don't know if I can ever narrow it down to a full story. You know, I will say that deployment, the crew getting to fly that plane over, we had a blast, and you really get to know people and build that relationship. And so it goes back to that community that you create with
Hmm.
these guys, like that ride or die. You're going to have each other's backs, especially within the gunner community. Like there's nothing else that I've ever
Yeah,
experienced like it outside of it. We're going to dog each other, but
of
we're
course.
going to go to bat for each other. And
Hmm.
I don't know if I can think of a specific story that stands out. I'm really going to have to sit with this one for the future. But I think just the laughs, the love, the respect, the hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears that we all put together. Like
Yeah.
it's so hard to wrap up into.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. That was a
Yeah.
great answer in my eyes. But yeah, so how many hours did you get on the AC-130? And yeah, what did you do after your time on this aircraft?
So it's over 1,000. I can't remember how many, but it's over 1,000. Um, yeah, I don't know if that's a lot. The tempo changed towards the end of my career where people are getting less flying time compared
Hmm.
to early days in the Afghan war. And so it's all good. But yeah, lots of time in that aircraft. So a lot of fun. And then not to count all the time on the ground because things break, you're loading guns, all
Yeah.
that. So yeah. So after I left the Air Force, I became a registered nurse and worked in the neonatal intensive care unit for a little bit.
Nice.
Transitioned into medical aesthetics, so more of wellness, IV therapy, skincare, lasers, all of those things. Did that for about 3.5 years. While I was doing that, I got my nurse practitioner, so I got my master's. I'm a family nurse practitioner now,
Wow.
and currently I work doing work with veteran medical disability claims, and I love it.
Well, we've got a couple of questions from some of our patrons and then a couple of personal ones to wrap up here, if you're happy with that.
Let's do it.
Right, so I've got two from Joe Kunzlet. So the first one is, did you get to shoot off a Hellfire missile or other air-to-ground missiles, or only the guns?
Only the guns because it was the U model variant. So the J model, the newer platform, and I believe the Whiskey, they have Hellfires and more missile capabilities. And if you ask me to go any further than that, I just have no idea. So we only had the artillery aspect of it. So I never got to shoot anything like that.
Right, brilliant. And the second one from Joe, what's the differences between the AC-130 and the Marines Harvest Hawk?
So I think the idea is the same, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, bless if anyone's in the Marines, please don't come at me for getting this wrong. But I think they're more similar and on point with the J model. I believe they have Hellfires. And so it's different capability, right? Like I'm sure they have very similar tactics and providing that close air support. Again, the J model is so different from the U model in my opinion with those weapons because it changes how close you can shoot in a sense a Hellfire versus a 40 millimeter. You can't put a Hellfire 14 meters next to a friendly. So
Yeah.
it's just different. So I think it's very similar probably to the newer variations of the gunship, but I don't think perhaps to what I flew on, there's too many similarities from like a C1 outside of being a C-130, providing close air support, having sensor operators on board, those kinds of things.
Brilliant stuff. Well, thank you for them questions, Joe. And the next ones are from Alexander Vatter. The first one is, in your opinion, what was the best position and or job on an AC-130, not counting the overrated bus drivers holding the yoke in front?
Bus driver. Oh man, that's a good one. Being a gunner, because I had freedom of movement. That's what I loved about this job is I could walk around and move around about the cabin for pretty much primarily the entire flight. The gunners were the glue that holds that crew together, in my opinion. And so I wouldn't change that. Yeah. Being enlisted, being a flyer, getting to do the weapons, the physicality, all of that. Yeah.
Great stuff. And the second one from Alex is, what would you have changed equipment or procedure-wise on the plane?
Of course, within my span, there's always upgrades, right? You're always having system upgrades, sensor upgrades, data, all of that. I wouldn't have changed the weapon platform. I think that was great. I think we had a great crew complement with enlisted to officer ratio within that aircraft, because the crew is what makes that platform so unique and layered with how we can do our jobs. And so I don't know if I would change anything.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
well, thanks for those questions, Alex. But yeah, moving on to some more personal ones. Obviously, you just mentioned where you went after your AC-130 time. Was this like a path you wanted to go down into that kind of wellness and medical side?
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to help people. And that's the core of my life is service and putting it forward. A question that keeps ringing in my head lately is ask not what they can do for you, but what you can do for them.
Mm.
It's that giving mentality. It's what can
Yeah.
I do to help someone else? And that is at the core. At this point, I think it's in my DNA. And I wanted to do something where I could do that. And when looking at healthcare, I saw that I would be able to do that, as well as there's so many specialties within it. You can be a nurse and do 1,000 different things. And I thought that really spoke to me. And I was looking for that next kind of busy thing to keep me going. That tempo, I think, is what I was really looking for to continue. So that's really what led me towards healthcare.
You're also the author of an ongoing essay series called Unfinished Business. Can you tell us about this and where the idea came from?
Yes. So it's on Substack. What initially started off as a blog featuring faces of the military community, I was presented some challenges when I transitioned into civilian life. And this was one way I could pay it forward for other individuals in this community. And I still wanted to create something. I'm a type A creative. And so I started up with that. And then I had a wellness series and a what became a mindset matters. And as I was doing this, it's a lot. It's a lot of work. And I was like, okay, I have to figure this out. And I was already on this personal growth journey and becoming introspective and learning about myself. And so it really shifted. That mindset matters kind of took over. And I decided I want to write about it now because I see a lot, and it's great within podcasts and life and self-help.
Yeah.
People talk about everything once they've crossed this. We don't have a finish line, but once they cross the finish line, if you will. And I kind of wanted to take this approach of like, here's me on the highway of life, guys, in my 30s. I'm going to show you where my car is, and here's how I'm navigating. Because I feel like with the military, healthcare, and the it's hard work, personal growth. And I want to show people and highlight where I am, the process as it is. It's not perfect. It's not polished. It's rooted in real life, and it's the becoming. And I want to share this journey to help people. And a big thing that I have found that I'm still working through actively, though, is self-worth and understanding the value of that. And I want to share that with people to help them on their journey, whether it be a pearl or an experience. A lot of times it's just putting words to feelings. That's helped me so much, is identifying it so I could take actionable steps to be a better leader, be a better mom, human being. And that's where I'm at right now with it. And so it's just an essay series to keep writing alive and share, my perspective from where I've sat in life.
Yeah, and I have to ask, do you enjoy the process as well? Is it like quite cathartic, like, going through that, putting pen to paper, as it were?
It's a challenge. I feel like I did a lot of writing through school and getting my master's. I did so many papers, surprisingly, in my bachelor's and master's program. And I get really excited when I get ideas. And so I try to collect them. And then what I'll do is I'm learning to love the process, because I typically, when I would write papers in school, would sit down for 9 hours straight and say, okay, we're going to just write this all out. And I'm trying to not do that, in the sense of, I'm going to write a little bit here and I'm going to let this idea marinate, especially when it comes to growth. And let me come back to it in 2 weeks and see, do I still think the same way about it? Do I have any new ideas that I can add to it? Because stuff does come to me, later on. And it's been a process, because that part's fun. And then what I find is, when I'm in the editing stage, I'm very tough and particular on myself. And it's kind of trying to balance the editor while you're writing. Because if the editor's in the seat too much, writing is not fun. So you have to learn how to split for a little bit, if you will, and then develop a process. That has been fun, figuring out a process.
So if you can remind our viewers where we can find this essay series online. I think you said Substack there.
Yes. So it's linked on I do have a website, marycatherinehowe.com. It's linked there, but primarily it's called Unfinished Business, because life's always unfinished. It's on Substack. And then I'm on all the social medias. Instagram's my home, if you will. Facebook's connected to everything. I don't really get on there. I do have a TikTok just to post, but I don't know how to do too much of that. But Instagram is where you'll find me. That's the primary hub. And then I link everything there. You can go to my Substack, my website, all that.
Brilliant stuff. That will all be linked in the description below. But a couple of ones to wrap up here. So, Mary, do you have any hobbies?
I run.
Nice.
I have my first, it's a 10-mile race. I have that in a few days. And then I'm going to sign up for a marathon this year. But I started running last year and it changed my life. I love it. I do that. I paint. I'm not very good. It's, again, for fun, a hobby. And then writing.
And I probably know the answer to this one, but favorite aircraft you've flown in?
I have flown in a Huey once. It's the gunship.
Yeah, of course. So, one you would like to fly in, either past or present?
Okay, I'm going to pick two.
Go on then.
Yay. Okay, past, B-17.
Nice.
Have to. Have you seen that show on Apple, the Masters of the Sky?
No.
It's about I believe the 8th Air Force during World War II, and these B-17s go in, and it's very historically accurate from what I understand, and it leaves me speechless what these men did and how they fought. And so I would be honored if a B-17. And then I would love to fly on a Chinook. And I don't have a specific reason, but I think there's something about the power of those and the rotors. It just speaks to me. I'm not a speed person. I like the idea of going a little slow.
Yeah. So you get the view. Yeah, that'll be good. Yeah. So you can take everything in. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Mary, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. So thank you very much for coming on the show. And yeah, hopefully we can get you back on in the future to go into a bit more detail on, the AC-130. But yeah, cheers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Mike.